Ali, what's the one thing you'd like people to know about your care home before they even come into it?
Before they visit, I think they need to see the USP, and our USP is pay. Um, so that's the first thing we need to broadcast is the fact that staff pay is going to be higher than competitors, and then no agency use as a result, and you have that continuity of care in those relationships. That's the thing we can market um, or have an online presence with. The rest of it really is feel when they come in. So we can't. It's very hard to translate that into a website or into any social media posts. That's something only when they visit. That's the first thing we try and get across. But it's always for us. It's our USP. It's that we're higher paying. We have no agency use, and that's it. Kind of tries to help justify the fee a little bit better,
Mhm.
um, because our fee bracket is in with larger corporates,
Mm.
and so we need to try and justify. I don't know if justify is the right word, but we need to try and explain why quite quickly
Yeah.
because it's not an 80-bed beautiful purpose-built home. It's a 28-bed home, so we got to get that USP across quickly first and foremost.
I'm I'm fascinated about your journey on your wages, and the positive benefit that's had
Yeah,
for Arcadia Care. But just before we go into that, there's a fascinating question I think around social care at the moment about how much we pay people. And what you've done has really bucked a trend. I think social care historically has always been a low pay employment area. What is it that what is it about pay, do you think, that is actually sort of lodged in social care's brain? What is it that we're doing here that's because most other sectors, even hospitality, they will try and pay more than us. What is it about social care that makes us different?
as in why we seem to be content with what it is,
Yeah.
and um, there's no will really. Um, Either on the political spectrum or on even at provider level, there's not enough will to change it. I think people. I mean, I started in care 16 years ago, and back then everybody was looking at everybody else to say, you know, who's going to do this and who's going to do that. And I remember when I was starting, I'd look at the larger providers, the national corporates and things, and I always thought they were going to lead the way. I thought they would pay more, and then the pressure would come onto us as smaller providers because we obviously can't recruit and retain compared to them, and that would force change at a political level for the local authority market. That didn't happen. So there's clearly a, I don't know, it's not apathy because everybody does talk about it, but everybody accepts it. They just do.
Mm.
They talk a good game. You know, you go to any conference or anything, and you read any social media post. Everybody talks a good game about staff. You know, carers should be paid more and this and that, but nobody really does it. I'm sure there are plenty in the country that are quieter than me, say, and they just go about their business quietly. But for the most part, there seems to be an acceptance that this is the rate, and there's a they understand that it's not great, but nobody is really doing anything about it on enough of a scale. And when you think there are 30 odd thousand care services, it sounds pretty easy to force that change, but you need a catalyst. You need someone to go over the front line first, or a few people to go over the front line first, and that doesn't happen. I first went into a care home when I was 7, so that was 1993, and there was no minimum wage then. So whatever the bottom was, that was what carers were being paid then. It was the bottom. You know, I don't know how you define that, but I'm 39 now, and carers are still being paid minimum wage. So people can harp on about progress and positive changes, but clearly nobody is willing to put their head above the parapet enough to try and force change. It's disappointing, especially for the largest operators who have the biggest chunk of the market that could actually um, bend over the system by saying, right, we're going to pay more and our fees are going to be higher as a result, and really put the state in a difficult position because they have so much capacity. But for whatever reason, I don't know, just doesn't happen. And then at our level, at a smaller level, we are looking at the big boys really to be the force for change. I think they're the ones with the ability to do that more than us. Because I did it and nobody cares. Like, nobody's following me to do anything. I've done it for myself, and everybody's kind of gone, how'd you do that? And what was the thing you did? And, can you talk me through it? But nobody's going to do it because one small home is probably considered an outlier or an anomaly. You need the real market leaders to force the change.
Let's talk about what you did, because it's a fascinating story. I don't know where you want to start. I mean, personally, I'd love to hear sort of what your COVID journey was like and what led you to your decision in 2023 to increase pay. But when you share your story and sort of where it feels appropriate to start.
Well, I said that I first went into a care home in 1993. My parents had one, so I've grown up around it, in and out of it pretty much my whole life. And you could always see what the problems were in terms of staffing, retention, recruitment. It was pretty easy. Maybe for a millennial or more, it's easier than it would have been for someone in an older generation. And when I came in to start working into the sector, it was obvious what the problems were. But the thing that caught me the most was not necessarily just say like they should be paid more, but you could see the role evolving. So it had long gone in the days of just personal care. Now we've got our carers having to diagnose things over the phone, having to have a skill set similar to what a nurse would without the qualification and the knowledge base is supposed to have. All these things that are just making it all harder and harder and harder, but more and more skilled. And that was the thing that bugged me the most, because pay should always be proportionate to your role and your skill level. It's not a kindness thing. It's just paying fairly for what someone does for a living. COVID was all right. COVID, for us, we got away with it for the most part. It wasn't, we didn't have a case throughout 2020. It was only going into 2021 that we picked up even just a case, let alone anything more serious. That again wasn't it. If I'm completely honest, I truthfully just got bored, and it was something like 2022. And I was just bored. I thought this is, very mundane. Nothing's happening. The sector is in the same spot it was in when I first started. I don't know. I'm fed up a little bit. I don't like doing payroll because I find it quite embarrassing sometimes when you see how hard someone works and you see what they take home at the end of the month. I mean, that's a pretty hard pill to swallow sometimes. But I remember there was the spark for me was actually 2017 or 2018. I met a provider who was the founder of Berkeley at the time. And I just stumbled across their website, and their branding was great. Their use of language, they weren't using words like excellence and care and all this stuff. They were actually using proper human language to describe what they do, and you could feel it. So I actually reached out, and he kindly had me up one of the homes to have a look around and everything. And at the time, he was paying, I think, 1.5 times the usual rate. His fees were like 1.5 times the usual rate anyway, but he was still doing it, which nobody else was. And I remember that planted the seed in my head that this could be done. We actually could do this. And then it was probably 2021, 22, where another provider called Vida, I think, I read a story that they had increased their pay by 30%. And at the time, that took them to 12 quid an hour. And I thought, yeah, that's it. I'm doing it. It can be done. I've always kind of worried about it because nobody else does it. And you do have that. It is in your head. Even if you back yourself, when you've got thousands of other providers that will not do it, you start to question yourself if it can be done, if I'm just being a bit naive. But I thought, you know what, I'm bored. I don't enjoy this as much. This isn't what I want to do in my life, is running a home day to day, dealing with recruitment, retention, agencies, paying bills. It just wasn't fun. So I had in my head the pay, and I had a couple of other ideas in my head that I wanted to do as well around workforce policy, let's say. I just did it. I thought, oh, why not? Our previous manager left us to go to a corporate, so she made a step up in her career. So I had this window where there was no one to, well, for me, no one to answer to. I had no manager that I had to try and get on board or try and change the way they might think. I was pretty much on my own. I thought, you know what, I'm not going to hire a new manager for a while. I let the regulator know. I said, look, you're going to have to deal with it. I'm not doing it until I'm ready. And I think this was around Christmas 2021. And we didn't hire a manager till the summer, but I just said, you're going to have to deal with it, mate. I'm not rushing into this. So in that period, then I started doing stuff that I wanted to try, and getting rid of things like a disciplinary policy, or trying annual rotas instead of 4 weekly rotas, this kind of stuff, seeing how they went on. And then the pay came after that. And a lot of it was born out of pure, maybe frustration with just the sector itself. And I wasn't enjoying my job as much. And I'm always good with, if I fail, I fail. But as long as I fail trying, and not because we had a slow death like some of the homes sadly do, where the fees the costs just spiral and it slowly dies. I didn't want to do that. If I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna fail because I tried to do the right thing, and I'll sleep at night that way. But luckily it worked. It absolutely worked. The first 6 months of the pay rise specifically, because I think we jumped from 10, I believe the real living wage was, to 13 pretty much overnight. And I had no idea if this was going to work. I could do all the spreadsheets and modeling a bit what I wanted. I had no idea if it was going to work. I had no idea if financially we could afford it. I had no idea if families were going to start pulling out residents, or we weren't going to get new referrals because the fee increases. I had no idea if the culture was going to be really bad because people were simply abusing that now and thinking, this is great, I'm being paid more, I'm going to do less. I had no idea. So it was risky, but I don't know. It was one of those things where inside you know how bad this could turn out to be, but you're still going to do it. It's too exciting not to. So that was 2023.
So what did that do to your family group? I mean, there must have been some communication beforehand. Clearly you would have had to have increased fees to cover all of this.
Yeah.
What was that process like?
The families is in the resident families.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I communicated to all the private self-funders at the time about the fee increase, and I said it's going to be big, but this is where every penny is getting spent. And I pretty much gave them a full breakdown of our costings moving forward, and I said, this is what I'm going to pay the staff, this is how much it's going to cost. But additionally, this is what I'm going to do around the building in terms of full refurbishments, upgrade facilities, that sort of stuff. Because I think the value for money for them has to be something they can see, as well as obviously the quality of care. They still need to walk in and feel like they're getting value for money. So there was a full commitment to the staffing and also to refurbishing the building now as we go, which we've done, but we carry on doing now because of the financial headway we can accumulate. And they were great. I mean, I didn't know how it was going to go down. I really didn't, because it was a big increase. I mean, I think it was 34% in 1 year. It was big. All I could do was just be completely honest about why. And I wasn't going to tell them it was because they were cost pressures or COVID, or I was going to blame it on anything. I was simply going to say, I'm taking a quantum leap here for the best. You know, I completely get it if it's ridiculous to you and things. And I think the only concern anyone had was, you're not going to do this again, are you? And I just said, no, this is that once in a lifetime thing I'm going to do. And from now on, it'll just be normal fee increases that you're used to. And the families were great. They were, to a person. I couldn't believe it, but completely okay with it. behind my back probably differently, but to me directly, they were great. Really, really supportive of it. No complaints, no concerns. And I've always operated like that anyway. I've always just told the blunt truth. I haven't, when it comes to relatives, I've never tried to dress something up another way. I've always just said, this has happened. This is why it happened. You know, if it's something, if it was a mistake, it's our mistake. This is why. This is what we're going to do to fix it. That kind of thing. I've never not done that. So this was no different. I just said the fees are going up because I want to do this. I get it. If you want to tell me to get lost, tell me. But this is the path I've chosen. So
And what did I think many providers will hear your story and go, I'd love to do it. I'd love to have a family group that buy into that vision, who say, yeah, you know what, if you're going to put up fees by £15,000 at least a year, yeah, absolutely, you know, if it all goes on wages, that's fine. It it sounds like there was a moral value judgment by every single family member there of, actually, you know what, I'm I'm not going to move my loved one out of this care home because actually this fella Ali, he's doing the right thing,
yeah,
and the value that that brings to your, you know, the individuals you're caring for, that's greater than money. Is that was that ever expressed to you? Did anyone ever talk in those sort of terms, or?
no. I think maybe that's what they thought. Maybe. I mean, I think the honesty part is the most important thing. I think had I said, look, I really want to, we're really struggling because of COVID X pressures and that sort of thing. I think the answer would have been very different. So yeah, maybe on a level, that's what they thought. There was also, if I was being cynical, an idea that, well, I don't want to move my mum out this home because it's not good for her. So I'm screwed, whatever I do. So maybe there was some of that, and there may have been a tinge of resentment as a result. I don't know, is the honest answer. They were very supportive and said, sounds good. I'm happy with that. No complaints. But there was never really an in-depth conversation from anyone about it. It was when somebody said, I mentioned about, you're not going to do this again, are you? Because that person actually said to me, you know, technically you've got us over a barrel. And I was a bit taken aback by that, but then I understand where he's coming from. I know, so it is, like, he doesn't want to move his mum because he's happy enough and she's happy enough. So I get where that cynicism came from. So maybe there's an element to that, but the only thing I could do from that point was deliver, show them the work that's being done in the home, pay the staff properly, get rid of the agency. And then the next year, obviously, follow up with a modest, if any, fee increase to just basically prove everything that I said and back it up. That was all I could do. And then hopefully in a year's time, there's a little more trust involved, that I will deliver on what I said I would deliver on. Because I can't imagine it went down too well. People like to your face is one thing, and you know, don't get me wrong, they wouldn't have been shy to tell me if they were really against it. But I think privately they wouldn't have been happy because it's an unproven model as well. It's okay, you're going to pay your staff more, and you know, what does that mean? You know, what's that going to look like? So it's a bit of an unproven model there. So I can't imagine it was a resounding behind the scenes or behind closed doors. I can't imagine they were all resoundingly happy, but I think there was enough goodwill that we built post COVID, because it wasn't an overnight decision. It was an 18-month timeline where we had to improve anyway and get to a point where we've accumulated quite a lot of goodwill now through changes and through better retention anyway and less agency. And then I thought we had the goodwill to be able to pull this trigger. I think if I'd have done it in 2022 or 21, no, I don't see it, because the home at that point was like any other home. It was going through the same problems as anyone else: the retention and recruitment, the COVID issues and things like that, funding issues. You know, we weren't working on the building as much as we'd like to. So we were no better, I don't think, than anyone else at that point. We had to show something first to buy that goodwill so that they would agree to this, even reluctantly, to see what happens next.
So clearly this has worked. By what you're saying on LinkedIn, there's been some resounding successes. What do you think the highlights of those are?
Uh, the first year we crossed without any agency was a nice milestone. You know, we cut agency out virtually overnight. That was the first point, which I felt quite vindicated about immediately. We were recruiting staff very easily when we needed to, which was another good thing. But I remember, because it's April 16th every single year. That was the last day of agency we had a few years back. So it's coming up again, actually, now in a week's time. That was the moment, I think, where I felt, yeah, we've had a full year of no agency. That's great. That's perfect. And we barely hired anyone as well. So we retained pretty much the same core group of people in that time. And it's all the little things, like complaints would go down. We didn't really have any more issues with anybody. You know, things were getting dealt with in-house quite quickly. It became self-policing among the carers, because the conversation we had was like, look, I'm going to pay you more, but you have to understand the pressure and the expectation on you is going to go up. You know, families not just going to be like, you know, great, they're being paid more. They're going to want to see something for that money, like even better standards. So you have to hold yourself to that higher standard. And I'm sorry, but you have to deal with it, because more money comes more responsibility in any walk of life. So they responded to that really well. And then they began to self-police it. So if we did recruit somebody who wasn't fitting in, let's say, or was being a little bit exploitive or abusive of some of the other policies as well, our core group of people actually self-police now and don't let them get away with it themselves. It doesn't have to go to the manager, it doesn't have to come to me. They will shut it down on their own to say, look, don't take the piss out of this, because they know it's not something that happens in every single home. They can't go and move somewhere else. And they know that it could. I mean, I wouldn't tell them this though, but I would never take any of this away. It's really, it's perfect for me. But I think if you're an employee anyway, you always have in the back of your mind that management could remove this perk or that benefit, whatever it might be. So maybe there's that in their minds too, when somebody comes along and is abusing the system, that they now self-police it. And that's another thing that I love. I just love that as well. That they're looking after the place themselves, and you know, it's not down to the care manager or me every time to step in. It's self-governed, which is great.
What is that? You mentioned earlier that when anyone walks into a care home, it's about the feel of the place. Have you felt that there's a change in feel?
Yeah, it's come from our own increasing confidence. So in years gone by, like everybody else, somebody will come into your home and you'll have the conversation and you'll start running through what the home does and your regulations and what you've got to do. And this is this room and that's this room. And then we meet their needs and this is what we do today, blah, blah, blah. But since we've changed our entire model, we've gained in confidence, myself and the people I work with. We've increased in confidence and we feel more relaxed in the home. So now when somebody comes into us, we must come across as very relaxed and cheery and almost down to earth. We barely have conversations around anything clinical or regulatory unless the person brings it up. So we just have general conversations now. We don't feel any pressure to sell a room, if you like. We just like having families in. We'll have a chat with them and we offer advice. We say, look, you know, if you need anything, if you go to another home, if you want to know what questions to ask, just ring us. We'll happily tell you. So we don't feel like we have to sell anything anymore. We feel quite confident that we can just be ourselves on day one to these families and when they're having a look around, which to me makes a huge difference. It's a huge difference to, you know, put people at ease straight away, and not have them walk into a home, you know, being told all this high level clinical stuff, and being told about routines and safety and health and safety and all these things. But instead just have a conversation like, you know, how are you? You know, how long have you been caring for your dad yourself? You know, how's that? What toll is it taking on you? Do you feel like you need to get your own life back and stuff? And then we can reassure them, say, look, if they move in, it's going to be hard. My line to everybody is, you may feel very guilty, uh, and we'll be that punch bag for the first couple of months. You're going to take it out on us, but just understand it's okay. We get it. We've seen it a million times. We know how it feels now at this point. We're able to try and really convey peace of mind more than trying to sell a care home to say this is how we'll care for your mum, but rather this is how we will give you peace of mind for you and your family as well. But that only came with confidence and momentum and feeling good about the place as well. And again, for me, like I've had the same 28 employees for a while now, so I feel confident talking about them because I know them.
Mm.
When if you've got this high turnover in agency and stuff like that, I can't really promise things because I don't know is the honest answer. But I have that such high confidence in our team because I've known them for so long, some of them, that if I talk up the place and I talk up them, I know exactly that I'm saying the absolute honest truth because I know the characters of the individuals.
As a provider, I think and you and I have both walked into other people's care homes, and you do get that sense, that first 30 seconds of spidey sense of, oh, this is either a happy home or there's an issue here. And I think that point around confidence and relaxed, it goes for me, and in I suppose actually reflecting on something I spoke to John Allen about, that sense of feeling at ease, at comfort in your, at home. You'd associate, being at home with being in comfort. That's a sense that people can only get by being in a place. And it sounds like that what you've been able to do is, by having this incredibly robust team, is actually have that relaxed confidence to go, you're at home.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of leave it to, see what you think, go see some of the homes, get a feel for them, and make your mind up. I'm happy with us. I'm happy with what we do and what we provide. I'm happy that we can back up everything we say. I'm confident in our team that they will be honest with you and they will put your mind to rest and they will always have a chat with you over the phone. And so, really, it's up to you. I don't mind if you prefer. I mean, we compete generally with a big home locally, and if someone picks them, that's absolutely fine. Their USP is that they are a magnificent big home with all the bells and whistles, and they are really, really beautiful. Ours is that we have the same core group of staff that we've had for years, and you'll get to know them, and you'll actually have relationships with these people, and so will your mum or your dad, and you can speak to them quite comfortably after a while because you see them every day, and I guarantee you'll see them every day. Um, but that feel is very much, yeah, it's easy for me to do it because it's my home, right? It's easy for me. I haven't got to answer to anyone, so I've always been fine doing that and being myself and not being overly professional because I think that sometimes is a negative for providers and managers as well when they try and overdo the professional side of things. But it's great now to see that everybody else is like that. Like they'll say things at times, you kind of go, you can't say that. But it's great. It's still, I don't mind. It's great because they feel confident that they can maybe tell a risky joke or speak to someone like they're their friend and things like that. And we've never had a complaint about it. No one's ever come and complained about our level of professionalism or that our level of or if we're getting a little bit too comfortable with people. No one's ever said anything about it. I think they appreciate that. Because again, it's something that maybe competitor homes nearby can't do
Mm.
as well. And we have to just lean into that. That's our edge. We have to go all in with it. So and I think it is. I think it is. I mean, we do mystery shop and stuff, and after about 3 of those phone calls, you kind of just want to go to sleep. It's so robotic and boring, and everyone talks the same, and it's just like, oh. So yeah, I feel that we do have a little bit of an edge locally in that. So
And in terms of your, too easy to get into metrics. Sorry, it's how we in our business we're so data heavy that you
Yeah.
start talking about what you're talking about, you're suddenly into conversion metrics and what's your funnel like, and all this horrible stuff that us providers now have to do. Are you finding that you're almost out competing local providers, other local providers, particularly the care hotels, let's call them, because of the feel and the value that you have, or is there still actually there is still market choice and people are not selecting you because they want something else?
So in the last 3, 4 years, we've lost out to the corporate 4 miles away a few times, which is normal, and we expect that. We've also had residents choose us as well, so it's that's not a problem in itself. We're going to win some, lose some when it comes to that. At the local level, so the smaller operators like us, it, it comes down to cost for some. Sometimes there will be a person that just says, you know what, I'm not. I'd rather pay the 1,200 quid. That other home was good enough, and that's fine. If that's absolutely fine. If somebody's got a choice to make based purely on quality, money's not the problem. It's purely on what feels right. I don't remember anyone ever choosing another small home than us
Mm.
in the last 4 years. The only times it's been is the big corporate, or on one occasion, it was the other home was cheaper. That's it. But our sales funnel, if you like, and our leads, that we do get less, but that's because we're priced higher.
Mm.
So we don't get all the local authority referrals and local authority funding. If somebody's going doing the rounds looking for it, we don't get those calls. We had to learn, actually. We had to completely relearn how to attract leads and convert them. We had to completely relearn that. It was something I didn't anticipate. We didn't know that self-funders can often be very, very early stage, and it can sometimes take 3 to 6 months before they end up moving into your home. Didn't know that until probably 2024. I started cottoning on and thinking, oh, right, okay. The behavior is a bit different here. They're very rarely urgent. They're mostly early stage, or I live abroad, I'm going to be back home in 2 months. Can I come have a look around? So we had to suddenly understand that bit and back off as well. So when we got these inquiries and we had these first conversations, we backed off because we could see that this was still quite an early thing. They hadn't even had a discussion with the mum yet, or the dad, or anybody else. Or they may even sometimes they just suspect the mum or the dad has dementia and maybe needs a care home one day. So that was the only thing that I got wrong. I got wrong because I didn't anticipate it. Was the nature of inquiries became very, very different and very early stage, and we had to simply deal with that and adjust ourselves to that, and accept that if we had a vacancy, it could take 3 months to fill. Not because the leads aren't coming, but just because most people who are calling aren't ready yet. So that was interesting. It's annoying, but it's fascinating.
And these new people coming on, obviously your original 2022 2023 cohort of residents has, on average, they probably all moved on by now.
Mm.
Um, the euphemisms we use. Um, so that suggests that you've got new families, new resident group, um, but you've probably still got that pressure and expectation that you mentioned earlier. How have your team adapted to that?
With very little input, they've actually done it quite well. They've got the experience of handling that expectation from day one. It is difficult because when people come in, we do seem to. I have been told this. They feel like they've been sold the world, and I don't know why that's happened, because it's not our intention to overpromise things too much and guarantee anything. But so I don't know where that's really come from. But nevertheless, that's how some people have felt. So there is a lot of pressure on when new families move in, because we feel like there's a heightened expectation. That could be because the relative, they viewed other homes, or the relative already been in another home and they were disappointed with it, and they heard this one was better and stuff like. So the expectation level is generally high. Uh, it might be our own nature that causes that. It might be the fact that we're quite confident that creates this sense that we can do no wrong. Maybe, yeah, that might be a reason. So the early days of a new family, of getting to know a new family, are trickier for us than they used to be. Certainly, they used to be. I think a lot of families, because they were more urgent, I don't think there was the same level of scrutiny that they were willing to give a care home. It was simply, look, are you doing almost the basics, and then worry about everything in a year's time or 2 years' time. But now, because families have made a much more informed choice over a longer period, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 viewings, maybe they've seen 10 homes, they've waited 3 months until they've moved in with us. There is that heightened sense of expectation that we're going to be really, really good. And if we fall short of that, we get told about it straight away. And I don't mean fall short in anything particularly bad. I just mean that if there's been the odd mistake, or if there's been the odd teething problem, or if there's been a miscommunication, we get it in the neck pretty quickly in the early days. My advice to everybody in that situation is we are the punch bag for people when they're feeling guilty. It's part and parcel of what we do. It's not nice, but understand that, when somebody has this level of guilt that maybe they were caring for their mum for a year or two and they put them in the home, that anxiety that comes with that, the fact that we don't know their routine, only they do, they're letting go of control, and is my mum safe, and how can I do this to her? They're going to take everything out on somebody, and it's probably going to be us. So, reassure them, be there, listen to it, take it, let them, and just make sure we do our jobs properly with the resident. That's all.
I think that's quite difficult for some for some providers, in that um, you've got to almost be counselling the child whilst caring for the parent, and those are often very long, and as you've discussed, there are some really complex emotions: anxiety, guilt, and it's not quite right, to the point of, my mum asked for a cup of tea with milk, and where's the milk? Or this
Mm.
this bottle of juice has clearly been here for an hour longer than it should have done. And things that providers go, okay, we made a mistake, but they're tiny things, but
Yeah,
people
they're big things.
of rightly complain about them. What are you doing around that? Has there been a mind check? You spoke earlier about having more time to have these more open conversations.
Yeah.
Is that confidence allowing you to have these conversations, or
Yeah.
is it something else?
Yeah, it's experience and confidence, and I back myself because it's been 16 years, and I've had so many conversations, and I think back to when I was having them in 2011 or 2012. I was a barrel of is it barrel of nerves or box of nerves, or whatever the expression is. That I was terrible at it, but now I've got so much faith in myself that I can reassure somebody, and I also try and remember that it's all coming from a place. Whatever the emotion is, it comes from something. Most people, it comes from their childhood. Something in their childhood makes them like they are today. The guilt part, you just have to remember that bit. It's so obvious sometimes that is what the problem is. And if you just keep telling yourself that when somebody is maybe barking at you, or they're not happy about the tiniest of things, to me, it's not a problem, because I relish the challenge of actually taking this person who's really critical right now and really unhappy, and making them happy. I like that challenge personally. But I think if any provider doesn't think that that's part and parcel of their job, is that peace of mind and that reassurance, in the wrong business. You're not there just to care for the one individual at all. It's the whole family that are involved in this. It's the biggest. Arguably the biggest shift in an entire family's life, not just one person. And you have to understand what comes with that from the family's perspective. And you have to understand that not all two people are the same. We've all had family members that could not care less. They put their mum in. You ring them up maybe 6 months later, say, mum's had a fall, she's got to go into hospital just to be checked. And they say, all right, fine, let me know how she gets on. We've all had that, but we've equally at the same time had family members who have gone ballistic over that same fall, which might be minor, just absolutely hit the roof. But you have to understand where this is coming from. You have to know the family dynamic to it. We've had a relative who cared for her mum for 3 years. I mean, to me, that's an unreal stretch. That is an unreal stretch of patience for someone to care for someone on your own who has dementia. Most of the time, it's like 6 months or something, and you're sharing it amongst siblings. So 3 years of full-time care for someone with dementia is enormous. On the one hand, yes, that relative will get time back when their mum moves into a care home, and they will get their life back to an extent. On the other hand, overnight, this life that she has known and this level of care that she's given is gone. All that anxiety, that worry that she's having in the middle of the night is murmur, that, always on edge, always ready to go at any time, not making plans for herself. All that's gone in an instant. It's not a gradual shift. It's gone. So she is going to be anxious, worried, afraid, because she has done everything for her mum, for instance, and now somebody else is going to do it who she doesn't even know. What do you think is going to happen? She's going to be a little bit paranoid and worried and angry to an extent and guilty, and she is probably looking for something to have a go at you about, just to vindicate her feelings. And you have to take these things into account. Otherwise, you're always going to end up arguing with a relative and telling them that you're doing everything right and this and that and the other, and eventually just saying, oh, you know what, actually, we think mum's more complex needs and maybe she should move. And it's always going to end up in that nasty position where you might actually want them to go. But you have to realize where this human being's coming from, which I like to think that most providers do that, and they are aware of that. But of course, there are those that simply think their job starts and ends with the elderly person in their home, in their care, and are they meeting their regulatory obligations? There are too many of those still around that don't care what the family think because they're not my resident.
Yeah. Do you feel that, and you mentioned earlier that obviously people are being more selective. You are expecting from your business side a much higher financial contribution. Therefore, people are spending more time being selective over which care home they place in.
Mm.
Does that mean that the family members that you have, and I use the phrase very advisedly, they care more, that they're demonstrating more of this guilt, this anxiety, and these behaviours where higher expectations, or is it been actually pretty constant, and you're just you just have more of them in your family group?
Yeah, I don't think it's a universal. It's very much dependent on the family dynamic anyway. Some families are simply looking for the best quality of care home they can find. It's a status thing sometimes to say my mum's in this home or that home, and she's in one of these luxury models, and she's what they want. For others, they simply are planning ahead. They think, right, dad's at an early stage of dementia, for instance, we better start looking. It's not really overly emotional for them. They're just trying to plan ahead. And then for others, they might have been full-time carers, and it is going to be more difficult. So I don't think it's universal, not in my experience. I always go about it purely by the family, each family individually. Like, you meet them, you get to know them for about 5 minutes. You can see whether this is a family that has got a lot of guilt attached or anger about this whole thing versus someone who's actually seeing this as, she's in the place she needs to be. I can relax a little bit, and I'm happy. But it's an individual thing. I never ever try and look at two people the same. I can box them in after a while to say this person is very anxious and we've dealt with this in the past, and typically this is our experience versus the other way. But I certainly wouldn't approach them to think that they should just listen to what I say, accept that I'm right, and they don't know what they're on about. I try. I'll never do that. But I think a big part of, I mean, I find it mind-boggling if somebody is not spending the time with the families to get to know them really well and to put their mind at rest and find out what their fears are and to put that to rest as best you can and to try and create almost expectations around it. Because, when you think of families who are more, let's say, highly strung, they're going to have significantly higher expectations on us than maybe someone else would. So if you spend the time to get to know them, you can begin to manage those expectations realistically so that they're not demanding too much of you. They're not demanding one-to-one care of you at certain times, that kind of thing. But in the end, always remember that a family member only cares about their own relative. They don't care that we'd have 28 or someone's got 200 or whatever residents. It's their relative. That's the most important person in the world. You have to get on that level with them and not try and deflect it that they're one of the resident. It's not just one of 28 or one of 50. They are that individual. This is the family. This is the only person that matters. This is what we've got to get right. But again, I stress it's very individualized based on who comes through the door.
Yeah. And the statistics that you posted recently on LinkedIn are remarkable. And I think you said 69% reduction in falls over 3 years, a sub
Yeah.
1% team member churn.
0.59.
0.59.
0.59.
Genuinely market leading and genuinely, far beyond. Like I think the average care home has something like a 30% team member churn, which 0.59% is remarkable. And obviously, you're being very transparent with this on quite a public forum. Do you do anything specific with families to talk about the metrics and the data, or is it much more of an emotional feedback process with them?
No, we post everything in our reception, as much as we can anyway. So we'll post the metrics around staffing. We'll post the metrics around falls, around mortality. We'll post, we'll update on schedules of works and what they cost and things. We try to be as transparent as humanly possible with them, within reason, obviously. But I think it's always worked best. I just do. I know some people are very uncomfortable with it. I'm the opposite. I'm very uncomfortable withholding information. Because I always feel like that could solve the problem or that could answer the question you've got. And I'm not very good at dancing around the subject. I'd rather just say it. So I am as transparent as can be and make sure they know that the progress is made. Because it is important, though, that they see that then what their money is getting them. It's not simply my mum has got a room, she's eating, she's changed, she's clean. But actually she's got these relationships with these members of staff because they've been here so long. And now it becomes a thing. If a new face goes up on our employee board or whatever, it gets noticed straight away. Like, who's that? I haven't seen them before. What's their name? What do they work days, nights? What's going on? So it is a big deal for them now when they see a new face just on that board. So it's always important so they can see the trajectory we're on. And it's important as well that we post setbacks as well as the positives. Again, just to be completely honest, because I don't think anybody's buying a linear trajectory of achievements. It's rubbish. So we have to also be fair and say, look, if we've had a bad year or a bad month in falls, we post it. But this is what I've discovered as a result of it. And this is the action plan we've got moving forward. Because those are opportunities for us. Those, if we've had, for instance, we had March was a bad month in falls, an unusually bad month. And so we did our deep dive audit of why. There's got to be a why. There's got to be something that we can point to that can say we can do better on that might help. So it gives us that opportunity to do that and come out with some ideas of how to try and improve things, or maybe the complacency that might have set in somewhere or in one area we can find and address. So I embrace it either way, good or bad. I love it. I absolutely love the feedback and the data. It's nice to post achievements on a personal level, and I don't really feel anything anymore from the good stuff. I know a lot of people would moan about that and say, celebrate the small wins and all this stuff. It's just not my nature to do that. I relish the bad stuff more. If we've had a bad month in something, if we've had a little crisis, I actually relish that a lot more because I've got work to do. I've got something I can fix. Whereas when things are going well, it's kind of like, what do I do with my day? And I just don't, on a personal level, I just don't feel anything from. It's weird. Not that I don't like them or anything. They're great, and of course, I'd rather life was easy and everything's going well. But for me, I feel a lot more when there's a dip or a metric that's going the other way or something, because it's like, right, let's fix that. It's a chance to rocket it back up a bit if we can. And I love doing that, where you've got like the chart will go like this, or like your falls will go like this, and there's a little uptick. And you think, little bastard, you try and like you do something to get it go back down, and then I feel a sense of achievement. Then I feel like I figured out something that we did, and then the staff ran with it, and now it's better. And I love that feeling. I don't know. It's not the same feeling when things are just going too well all the time. It really isn't. It actually worries me. It worries me a lot when things are going well, because you think, I don't know, you just think it's too good to be true sometimes. But that's just me. I'm not, if somebody likes to go and have a party every time they make the bed or whatever they do in the mornings, and good for you. If that's how you feel better and it gives you momentum, go for it. But I can only do what I can't celebrate anything. I don't care enough to celebrate things like that.
I think it's interesting that where people get their dopamine hits from.
Mm.
Um, Talking to a number of people around the workforce challenges at the moment, and how do we recruit particularly the younger generation into care, there is a sense that actually these individuals and their emotional intelligence are such that they get dopamine hits when they provide care, when they do something good, or they help someone, and actually that gives them that dopamine kick. It doesn't sound too dissimilar to yourself, just obviously at a sort of a leadership level of, I've noticed a problem, I've fixed it, and I've
Mm.
made something better, and that's your dopamine kick. Welcome to social care.
Yeah, we all love it. If we help an old lady cross the street, it's we feel good for the day. It's that same sort of thing. Um, Young people is like, I don't know. I think that the campaigns that we see to attract young people are just all wrong, all wrong. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not saying that I'm right, but to me, I look at some of the ideas of how to attract young people. I just think, guys, you pay a minimum wage, get stuffed. If you think any 16-year-old is looking at that going, you know what I really want to do? I really want to be a carer. I want to do that for the rest of my life. I mean, 50 years ago, people weren't saying that. What makes you think kids today are saying that with the opportunity that they've got ahead of them? Um, you can't really sell it on the emotional fulfillment either as well, because I think kids, young people especially, don't have that. They can't see that far ahead, and why should they? One of the worst things about growing up was we being told of what do you want to do with your life, and if you didn't know when you were 18, 19, some people. I mean, especially my parents. My parents at 19, I didn't know what to do, and I wasn't in university or anything. They absolutely wanted to kill me for it. They hated me for that. They wanted me to be an academic and become a doctor. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So still, I read some of the marketing material and the campaigns that aim at young people, and it still is got this long-term vision of care as your career. And I think, well, number one, you pay a minimum wage, and that doesn't go up either. You have to get to manager level and then beyond, which is a very, very limited pool. Even then, when you become a deputy, it can sometimes be difficult to make the step up. Not many people take the leap of faith on you. So if you're going to be a carer, what's your ambition? You want to be a senior? Okay, it's, like a quid an hour more in a lot of places, great. You want to do this until you're 65, 68. So I think whoever's writing these campaigns or thinking about targeting young people, they're not young enough, I think, to understand what the problem is. The problem is that you need to sell it as almost as a stepping stone to something else, as a pathway, as a gateway to something else. Data analysis, for instance, in care is a job role that hopefully will become a lot bigger in the next few years and become more of a staple in someone's management team. Become a carer, and then you can learn the data, and then you become a data analyst. We'll put you on your training, and then you can tell stories and help us to deliver better care. That's one way of looking at it, and create these lateral steps for people rather than just carer, senior. But then you're going to have to leave if you're in a small home, because only this big home has a pathway to deputy and to care manager, and if you're lucky, one day regional director and so forth. And that's not what anyone wants to do. That's just it's not. Nobody. Very few kids are looking at a corporate ladder and thinking, "I want to climb that." So it's maybe selling the possibilities of care on a lateral move. Maybe if you become a carer, you understand the emotions and the stories and the lives, and then you go into content creation for care homes because you know how to tell these stories. If you love photography and you love content and social media, that's an avenue you can take, and you can tell these really good stories and these powerful stories. Because again, it's difficult. It's not like most marketing companies can understand that themselves. They're not experienced at it. Many can struggle to try and sell a care home to somebody because they're not sure how to tell that story of the individual. But become a carer, get to know them, know what it's like for the carer, for the families and everything, and then you can become a good content creator later on. So there are these sideway moves you can make, but they're not being sold to carers. It's a vocation. It's fulfilling. It's minimum wage. Don't tell anyone. And maybe one day you'll be a regional director of a 60 group home and get a bonus at the end of the year. It's not for kids today. It's not for these kids that can literally go on Claude and build an app, in the time we've been talking. So we have to make care and accept what it is. It could be a career. It could be something you love. It could also be a gateway to something else where you benefit from the experience of it. It's like nursing is still a huge career pathway from care, access to nursing, etc. So you've got to try and, even though we might not like that and we might not like the thought of that, we've got to try and present it in a way that resonates with a young person, not with us.
I wanted to just double back and just pick up on something about sort of your business model and the implication that would have on local authority funded individuals or those in receipt of NHS funding. Clearly, you are asking your privately funded residents to pay more than the local authority.
Mm.
There are two questions in my head. Tackle them in whatever order you want. The first is, if every provider adopted this model, suddenly we cut out the local authority market. So I'm not sure from a market shaping perspective that that's the right thing to do. But in the same breath, clearly there'll be a time when certain individuals drop from your private pay into, all of their assets are gone, they drop into local authority funding. How do you square those two circles?
So my dream in the first question, my dream is for every provider to reject local authority fees and price higher, because not to punish the local authority, but to punish the state. Because if everybody said no, everybody rejected every placement from now on, something has to give very, very quickly. And it's not going to be us, because most of us are at quite a decent capacity anyway. There's only a finite number of beds. So we're going to be fine on a commercial level. It's the state that's got the problem now, because they're being backed up with all these cases of people at home or in hospital that need care. And it sounds a little bit cold, but it's one of those short-term pain for long-term gain situations. So if we did do that, and we all en masse told the local authority that this is our fee, we're not placing, and we all committed to it, something's got to give. And my guess would be within a week it's the funding, and suddenly social care gets a lot more funding to match what we would consider a safe level of fee, a viable, a sustainable level of fee. And from there, providers can do what they want. If they want to keep going up above that, that's fine. But at least the fee level comes up to a point where actually you could pay more to your staff as well. You could do it. You have that resource now, and we do elevate the whole workforce. I don't want to have a monopoly on it locally. The whole point was for everybody else to do it. So that point one for me would be great if everybody did just say no and do it together. That would be the best thing ever. It would solve the problem pretty quick. On the second point, this is the ugly, dark side of this. It's horrible. Family might run out, and a resident might run out of their funds, and the local authority will always just try and work around the system and say, you're going to have to move to a cheaper home. It's just the way it is. I'll put up the list together. And it happens every single time. Every single time. You don't get included in the conversation. You don't get best interest meetings. You don't get best interest assessments. The Mental Capacity Act isn't followed. They're not putting the needs of the person first. They're always putting the needs of the council first. Despite their argument, they will always say to you, we have to balance pressures against blah, blah, blah. They're not. Because if you say to someone you're going to have to move to a cheaper home, and you're not doing things like best interest assessments, which include memory teams, GPs, all that stuff, you're just putting your own needs first. And if you're a commissioner, your needs is your career and climbing that ladder. So you're putting your needs first. And they have trained their social workers, it seems, to follow their way of doing things rather than what the law tells them to do. So we have a very difficult time with social workers. And it's to be fair to all of them, it's not their fault. They are doing as they've been instructed. And I've only known one in the last 3 years that has done things exactly the way the law says to do them. And funny enough, when they followed the law and they followed the textbook, that family didn't have to worry. The fee was picked up straight away. There was no concerns. It was all guaranteed in writing, and that was it. That's what happens when you follow the law. Because at no point can you go to someone with dementia and say, actually, if you move, this will be in your best interest. There's no way. It's impossible. So it's very frustrating. They're very dismissive. I mean, I can only speak to ours. I'm sure there are some very good commissioners and things around the country, so I don't want to disrespect the whole profession. But for the most part, certainly from the stories we hear, it's the same pattern all over the place where family might go and say, look, my mum's running below the threshold. And they say, right, okay, I'll put a list of homes together. She'll have to move. And luckily, the days of a social worker's word being gospel are gone. And families do come to us and tell us the situation. And I've taken up the fight. And honestly, it was personal, which is why I did it. I was really annoyed. So it was a personal joy. It still is going on with one resident. It's been about 18 months. Yeah, 18 months. So, but to me, it was personal, and I wanted to not let the council get away with it because they were exploiting quite a lot of the situation, the lack of family and stuff. My advice to everybody else, and certainly my own advice for myself moving forward, is always get the families to be the ones to take up the cause. I never used to. I was the one who always took up the cause. But then I realised that I had to slowly learn, and solicitors have taught me this, that I'm not as powerful a voice as a family. And whereas I thought I was doing the right thing, actually the right thing to do would be help the family, but they've got to be the voice. They've got to be the ones doing the fighting. And these days, when somebody does move in, we actually tell them what's going to happen when mum or dad runs out of money, and we tell them that they can't do that, and we tell them just to say no, and we do, because you can't just come in and tell someone to move because you want to pay less. There's a process to follow. There are rules to follow. There are acts to follow. You don't do any of them as commissioning teams. They don't do any of it. So we pre-warn families exactly what's going to happen, what they're going to be told, and we tell them that it's all a load of bollocks, really. It's just trying to get them to move quickly and without having to follow the legal process. Because if they consent, they consent. That's it. It's done. But so we make sure of that early, despite councils. On the flip side, you get councils now that are giving us letters telling us to inform the families that they may have to move if the resident runs out of money. So we're all getting these instructions, if you like, basically saying to families of self-funding families, by the way, if you run out of money, you'll have to move. Basically talking ourselves out of occupancy and new residents and stuff like that. So luckily, I don't think it's certainly on my local level. I don't know any providers that have gone and shared that information, because we all know it's wrong. We all know it's a load of rubbish. It's not true at all. It could be true, but you've got a lot of regulations and statutes you've got to follow first, which you're trying to hopefully bypass by just getting us to do it for you. So not pleasant, and it's been the bane of my life for the last couple of years, still going on, but I can only speak for myself. I will never, ever, 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 ever let a resident leave over money. Never. I mean, we've cared now for one individual in particular is now over six figures of fees that haven't been paid. But I don't care. I don't care. I will scorch earth to win this one, because I'm not setting that precedent where the council can come in and just move people over money. Not having it.
So family member comes to you. We've got 6 months until we hit capital asset threshold. What do I do? What are your top 4 or 5 bullet points?
So first things first, go and tell the social worker. They will then come and tell you. They'll come and likely do a financial assessment. They're going to tell you, mum will either have to move or you'll have to pay a top up. That's what they're going to tell you. Just say no to both. Demand a best interest assessment with everyone, memory team, and GPs, any other healthcare professionals involved in that, in your mum's care or dad's care. Involve them and make sure that takes place first and foremost. Watch how quickly they will not agree to it and just kind of kick the can down the road. The risk for the provider is that the longer it goes on, the more you're just delivering free care. So there is always that risk of they can just ignore the situation for as long as possible and, try and outlast you. But encourage the families to get in touch first and to set down these markers, and to basically, you need to know the law and the process yourself to be able to advise, this is going to happen next, this is going to happen next, make sure you ask for this, and then just see what happens. Sometimes you really do get a really good social worker or a commissioner that just agrees that this person should stay in their best interests. We can't argue with that. Sometimes you do, and that's great. Other times we'll have to see, you have to see what they say, but advising the family on a solicitor would be a good thing, even if it's legal aid, especially if the resident is falling below their threshold, to get legal aid support. As a home, as a provider, I follow the path of looking at JRs and trying to expose their decision making. But it's always been on a case by case basis. It's really trying to make sure the families are aware of what's going to be said, preparing them for it, making them understand that what they say here about top ups or moving is not true at all. And here's the regulation, the statutes that say they can't charge a top up. They can't. A top up is an optional payment. They're making a mandatory payment by saying to you, if you don't pay it, she'll move. So they've taken this optional payment and made it mandatory. So you can show them that, and that's point one. And then we can only go with the flow from there. I don't know what the outcome will be as of that. As I said, sometimes you get a really, really good moral person on the other end who just does the right thing, and other times you've got a puppet for the council that will, come hell or high water, save them money, even if they've got to break the rules to do it. So you have to find out who you're dealing with first. But I instruct the families on this the day they move in. I don't wait for them to run out. The first thing I say is, if mum or dad ever runs out of money, this is what's going to happen, and this is what you need to do, and I'll be with you every step of the way. And by the way, under no circumstances am I going to evict your parent, even if I say to the council, either pay our fee or, I shouldn't say this really, because if my council are listening, they know I'm bluffing on the other side, but we'll see. But I might say to them, look, either pay the fee or I'm going to give notice. Try not to worry too much about that. because the onus then really is to put the pressure on them. They've got to make the decision. Put it on them. So either you pay our fee or get out. But it's on the council to make that choice. And that's the mistake I made early on that I'm only learning now that I made. And it's really not to argue the point, but to make them make the decision. Because as long as they're not making anything and they're not forced to, you're just caring for free. So you carry on. And this was something that I didn't know and I didn't realize very early on. And I probably could save myself a year of headaches. Is that they're not actually having to do anything. They just sat there replying to my email saying, yeah, okay, whatever. I'll get back to you and stuff. They don't actually need to hurry up at all. I'm the one that's providing care for nothing. So you need to be firm and make them make the choice, but then also make them justify the choice as well. If they say, actually, we can find another home for you. No. The law says you need to have a home that can meet their best interests right now. And you've got to demonstrate to me how it meets their best interest, including the emotional well-being, by the way. How do you meet the emotional well-being when she's got established relationships here, where she has friends here, where she's lived here for 4 years, where the carers know her better than anyone else can? How are you going to meet those needs at this home too? So really, really always pile on that pressure, make them justify things, make them make decisions. And if they make the wrong choices, then that's what judicial reviews are for then.
Awesome. Thank you. That's really valuable advice. I'm aware of time, but I wanted to ask one more question, subtly different to the one at the top. What's the one thing that you wish people knew about social care?
Ooh. I'm trying to separate my the business side in my head, what I think about the business of it versus the human aspect of it.
Well, that's an interesting point. Discuss that. What do you mean by business and the human side?
I have a very negative view, which is why I was being cautious, because my instinct is that negative perspective of things. So I was trying to actually think of something positive on the other side, and I was trying not to think of something like, the carers are wonderful, and it's a community and all this stuff, which is all true. I'm not saying it's not, but it's cliche as well to say. I think.
Yeah, be honest. The whole purpose of the podcast is to support people to understand social care, and it's from the provider's mouth. If it's negative, it's negative. It's got to be real.
So I think a lot of care, when I read about it from outside perspectives, is very ideological. It's not rooted in common sense a lot of the time. It's very ideologically driven in terms of care should be private or public. It should be state-owned. It shouldn't be owned by PE and all this stuff. So I think if I was to put my hat on, I mean, we're not PE-backed, and I have my own opinions about some of it. But even if I had a negative view of private equity, for instance, people have got to understand that without them, this sector probably collapsed a long time ago. That I think I read that even with all the new builds that have gone up, there was still only 136 net gain in beds in the last year because of the closures alongside it. So while I understand when it comes to things like institutional investment being a bad thing, and I understand that ideological view, people need to know that government have never stepped in to fill these supply issues or to meet the demand or to meet the cost. They've never done it. So you might not like what capitalism stands for in that sense, but understand that without it, care definitely would have collapsed a long time ago. So they're necessary, whatever you look at it. On the flip side of that, just to balance out my capitalist versus lefty thing so that I'm on everyone's side of it, I think private equity, the people that PE have backed, who are the big homes that charge a lot of money and they're great homes and stuff, and they're all beautiful homes. If private equity had a different expectation of care and a different model of it, those companies could have really elevated the sector a lot more than they have. I mean, specifically in staffing pay, they could have done it. But when the modelling at that level is done on minimum wage, I mean, to me, that's wrong. To me, the fees that are used, the money that's generated, I don't know necessarily what a P's return is. I'm not going to speculate, but if they dropped it a little bit per home, knowing how low risk in terms of supply and demand, stable the business is, it's almost like a subscription business where the churn is very low. If they manage their expectations, these providers could pay a lot more as standard, and it would have this wonderful ripple effect through the sector where the pressure gets mounted onto us, and then we've got to step up, but that means the local authority has to step up, which means they have to go and lobby and so on and so forth. So I think people should know that it's the ideological views of care is not very black and white. It's not black and white at all. It's not private, public, PE bad, government good or government bad, whatever. They need to know that all these things have a place and are all important in their own right, and things could be better than they are. But that's a conversation for another day about what could be done on that front. I think the other points that I think about with care would make me seem like I'm speaking from my side only, and I'm not taking into account, say, a commissioner's side, because I could really go to town there. But in fairness, I try not to do that because I just sound vindictive, and obviously they're not here to reply to themselves for themselves. So
as it happens, we've got one coming on in a future episode, so you can wail for it now, and they can defend themselves later. It's fine.
I think it's tough because I don't want to label everyone in the same way. I really don't. I like to believe that there are always exceptions to that rule, that there are just good people there that will do the right thing regardless of what the system is telling them to do or what their bureaucracy is telling them to do. But on the whole, when it comes to commissioning, and because we read a lot of articles about resident was evicted because the fees went up, or the fees went up this much, someone had to leave, etc. They've got to understand that it's actually, in these cases, the local authorities on many of these cases are the ones that are not applying the law properly. But the problem we have in care is that the state owns the PR of it. We don't. We have nothing in terms of controlling the narrative. We're really bad at it. Because we speak from an individual perspective. It's all fine and good me posting something about our achievements, but it doesn't reflect the sector, whereas a politician can go out and say something about care and it applies to all of us. So there's so much that is misconstrued in the public domain about how care works, and these headlines are easy. Fees went up 7%. I mean, I read that the other day. Family were furious that fee went up 7%. It's like, Jesus Christ, 7%. It's probably about 50% under what it should be anyway. But it's so easy to write that, and the government and politicians and the state has so much control over that narrative, and we don't. And there are a lot of nuances to it that people don't understand and shouldn't be quick to judge either about care. And this applies to both sides. There are bad actors on both sides completely, and I'm never going to sit here and if I see a really bad headline about a care home neglect or whatever it might be, and then you often read at the bottom the provider talk about social care funding being a problem in it, I'm not going to justify it. I'm not going to defend that at all. So there are bad actors on both sides, but the way the narrative in this country is, it's controlled by the state, and they can throw out a one-liner that just rinses us completely. We're all posting individual stories. It doesn't get any traction at all because it's not reflective of the sector. It's just our business. So I've got quite a lot of cynical views about the game being rigged and stuff, and it's stuff that has made me question, like, what is the point? Sometimes you sit there and you think, what is the point of any of this? Because you're fighting against the people that are supposed to be helping you. You're in a constant, you're constantly being attacked, or someone is counting on your failure or your mistake to pounce. Sometimes it's just like, what is the point? I don't know. I'm kind of veering off the subject of what I would like people to know and just going into my own what annoys me tangent now of what bugs me about this sector quite a bit. But um, I don't know. If you should we just assume you ask me that question, what bugs me, and I'll just carry on. I, I said at the start that when I came in '97, so when I was 7, and now I'm 39, not a lot has changed apart from the aesthetics, really. And we have some pretty decent technology now compared to what we had. And regulatory, you'd imagine, is better than it was 30 years ago. Although a work in progress, it's still significantly better than it was. But I look around and I just think, when you step back, you think, what's really changed? What's really better about it all? And then you look at how the market is moving, and it's it's the same kind of cohort of people that just buy up homes that are already doing well. So, and then all of a sudden we're supposed to celebrate these people as market leaders when really all they're doing is the home was already there and it was already performing. They just changed the name and someone's enriched themselves by buying it. That's all that's happened, because not many of these places have actually advanced the sector or elevated the sector. They've just grown as a business. That's it. No more than that. The balance sheet's grown and the revenue's grown. But what they've done on the floor of it, what they've done at the heart of it, is nothing. And it's true. Nothing. There's nothing that's made care more attractive to people to come and work in. There's nothing that's changed our image from what people think. I mean, we're in 2026, and you saw what Zach Polanski said about a carer and wiping bums. I mean, that's 2026, and that's a radical leftist view of care. That's how little has actually changed when you think about it. For us, inside, a lot's changed. We can see that. We can see that the advancements that we've got and available to us that make life easier. But this is a market that, because of the expense, because it's real estate, and because it's so expensive to build or to acquire or whatever it is, it's attracted a lot of the wrong people that are not bad providers. I'm not suggesting that. They're not bad people inherently, but they're not interested in raising the bar at all. And it's very, very frustrating for someone like me, especially, because the position I'm in, for example, I could work harder than anyone else in the world. I don't, and you can make that clear, but I could work harder than anybody else on earth. It ultimately counts for nothing beyond what I already have. I can't push that message. I can't replicate that formula anywhere else, because I simply, my pockets are not deep enough to do that. And or I wasn't born with the right family name, or I don't live in the right postcode next door to the person with the keys to the kingdom. So it's not I'm not having a pity party about it. What I'm suggesting is that there is so many good operators that could actually change the sector, not just their business, not just improve that, but I mean push the boundaries and elevate everything for everyone. And it can't get a sniff because of the way the sector is set up for the same handful of people to just buy up the market, and we're supposed to give them a pat on the back for spending money, basically, and not a whole lot else. You look at this Welltower deal, for example. What exactly is the benefit of that to anybody? Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to get better as a result. Staff are not going to be paid more. They might, but they're certainly not going to make any sort of quantum leap in that. Nothing's going to change. Management's just going to probably get rejigged a little bit, but the idea is generate the returns every single year. Here's the slow, steady growth. Job done. So what good is that £6 billion deal to social care for the next 15 years? Nothing. But it happens at every scale, so at every level. So you've got that Welltower thing, and then you come down the levels where you've got these buy and build providers, and none of them have any ambition to do anything radical. at all. And part of that is probably their backers don't want them to, and they haven't got the spine to challenge that. And others might be that look, they're enriching themselves by doing a decent job, but not much more. And I think for me, it's frustrating because I don't know. I would be pretty upset if, in 20 years I retired and my legacy was just in one care home and stuff we did there, and nothing else outside of that changed. That would be disappointing to me. And I know there are people saying, "Oh, you should be grateful for what you've done and appreciate what you have." I am. I do. I don't want to sound like I'm not, but I just feel there are people out there that have the ability to change the whole sector, but they don't get a sniff, or they don't get a look in. And because of the size and the scale of elderly care, especially, it's very, very difficult for anyone that has not got the deep pockets to make a dent. So we're left with cookie cutter, all in the same suits types who, say the same thing, don't inspire much, and just toe the line. I mean, these are people who, most of them, they can't even mix and match their suits. They're so generic. They're just wearing a full navy suit. They won't even wear grey trousers, navy jacket, or anything like that. It's so just generic and mundane. And it's been 16 years for me. And it's part of the reason I did the pay thing. I was frustrated. I was just fed up and bored and frustrated. And I thought, I'm not waiting for anybody else. But I don't know, if I was to rant, maybe that's how you should end your things, by asking people to go on and rant a bit, because I don't know, we can be better, but you need the right people for that. And respectfully to everybody, there's probably only less than a handful of providers I've met in 16 years that I have a really high opinion of, and I respect it hugely. I like a lot. Personal levels, they're all nice people, but I'm going to name drop one just because I do like him a lot. Is Seamus at Arcadia Care now. He was Berkeley, Arcadia Care. I just thought that's the guy I'd model myself on, for the most part, him. And I've not had that from anyone else really in the time that I've been around and met people. I've learned more what not to do than what to do from providers, apart from him. I have a huge amount of respect for him and admiration for the way he runs his homes and the way he thinks. And I just wish that more people did that, because, I don't want to care in 20 years' time to still be talking about minimum wage. It's getting tedious and it's getting boring. I don't know. But anyway.
Ali, that's beautiful, man. That's and that was one of the most eloquent rants I've ever heard.
I used to have therapy that was on Teams and calls like this every Wednesday. So I think it's just taken me back to having a session with a shrink where I can just go for half an hour, and then she'd tell me just to stay in the present at the end of it.
Ali, that's been great. Thank you so much for your time. I'm aware we've taken a lot of it. If people want to get in touch, and see what you're doing, maybe even benefit from a rant, where can they find you? How can they get in touch?
For any provider and ever, honestly, I love, if I can help in any way, I really will. Even though I sound like I hate them all, I don't. Especially the smaller providers, anytime I can speak to anyone, I'd love to. Just message me on LinkedIn, or search up Arcadia Care Home and give me an email. Salespeople, don't call me ever. Don't email me ever. Your AI outreach already does that multiple times a week on my LinkedIn messages, so leave me alone. But anybody in care, by all means, anytime. If I can offer anything, I will. I don't know if I can, but Uh, yeah, I always love to offer 2 pence if I can.
Ali, that's great. Ali, you're amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for that.
Talk to you
Appreciate
soon,
it.
man.
Cheers. Take
Cheers.
care. Bye.